Commissioner Plant, are you ready or do you need oh, there you are. Welcome. I'm Eric Blank. This is the Commissioner's Weekly Meeting for October 23rd, 2024. Commissioner Plant, any preliminary matters, or are you ready to approve the consent agenda?
I am ready to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Goman.
Morning. I'm ready to approve the consent agenda. And I did just want to ensure we give people a reminder about the upcoming public comment hearings next week. Do you have that on your list, or would you like me to list them off?
You can do it now. I was going to do it with the Black Hills rate case, but maybe we'll do it at the beginning and the end. So why don't you do it, and we'll do it again when we get to the Black Hills rate case.
No worries. Sometimes I've done it at the end and you tell me you're not sure if anyone's still listening.
Yeah. I agree with.
I'll do it now. I'm trying to learn. So October 29th and 30th, which is next week, we'll have public comment hearings from 5 to 9 p.m. at the Pueblo Memorial Hall in Pueblo. There will be Spanish language interpretation services as well as American Sign Language on the 29th for those services. Also, November 19th, we'll have a public comment hearing at the City Council chambers in Canyon City. And that starts at 4 o'clock. Hold on, of course, my computer is blocking the end time, 4 to 7 for that. And then we'll have a virtual, Chairman, can you just give me the time on the virtual? Sorry, my
4 to 7 on December 5th, and the November 19th is at 128 Main Street in Canyon City from 4 to 7.
Thank you. Sorry, my computer was literally signing me out over top of it as I was trying to read it off to make sure I got the details right. But we'd certainly welcome and be happy to hear from the public at those opportunities, and hope folks will be engaged and come provide comments during those opportunities.
Looking forward to getting out of the metro area. I support the approval of the consent agenda as well, and we'll go to 24A-0385R. Mr. Farrell.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alan Farrell here with the Rail Transit Safety Section, and I'm here today for any discussion in relation to proceeding number, as you mentioned, 24A-0385R, which, if you're ready, I'll now address.
Yep, we're ready.
In this proceeding, CDOT submitted an application on behalf of the City and County of Denver to install cantilever flashing lights, back flashing lights, and replacement of gates at the crossing of Santa Fe Drive with the tracks owned by BNSF in Denver to improve crossing visibility for motorists approaching the crossing. Santa Fe Drive crosses 2 tracks of the BNSF railway at a skew. Santa Fe Drive is a one-way street with 3 lanes on a horizontal curve at the tracks. The approach is on an uphill grade, which may contribute to visibility issues for approaching motorists. The crossing currently has active warning railroad flashing light signals with gates. The proposed installation and the height of the overhead flashing light signals will be more visible to motorists approaching from the south. Warning times currently in use at the crossing will remain the same. Traffic volume using the crossing is currently 28,000 vehicles per day, of which 10% are heavy vehicles. No school buses use the crossing. The traffic posted speed limit at the crossing is 30 miles per hour, and there are currently 12 daytime through trains and 12 nighttime through trains each day that use the crossing at a maximum timetable speed of 30 miles per hour. There have been 9 property only and 2 injury accidents reported at the crossing since 1975. CDOT estimates the cost of the project at $286,877. CDOT will cover the cost of this work through appropriation of federal Section 130 funds. CDOT proposes to start the installation on July 5th, 2025, and anticipates being complete with the work by October 31st, 2026. And there were no interventions filed in this matter. And unless you have any questions, I have a recommendation.
If you can give your recommendation, that'd be great.
Thank you. Staff recommends the Commission deem the application complete grant the application and require CDOT to inform the Commission when the crossing is complete, and require CDOT and BNSF to file an updated U.S. Department of Transportation crossing inventory form for the crossing in this proceeding by October 31st, 2026.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision, Mr. Farrell. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Why don't we do the Unit 3 PIM last and skip to 23A-0356E, the Public Service Company Quality of Service Plan. Mr. Foreman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Wyatt Foreman of your Commission Council. The decision for you here is whether to grant the unopposed motion for partial waiver of recommended decision number R240396 filed by Public Service on October 14th, 2024. Public Service's motion seeks Commission approval of a permanent and partial waiver from recommended decision R24396 as modified by decision number C240579. Specifically, the company seeks authorization to update the customer complaints metric in the company's Electric Quality of Service Plan, or QSP, from 6.5 complaints per 1,000 customers to 0.65 complaints per 1,000 customers, which will address a decimal transposition error that was, according to the company, inadvertently carried over from the company's last Phase 1 electric rate case in proceeding number 21A-0317E. To provide some brief background, Public Service filed an application for approval of the continuation of and modifications to its electric QSP on June 30th, 2023. The Commission referred the matter to an ALJ by minute entry, and on March 13th, 2024, all but one of the parties to the proceeding reached a settlement in principle, which was opposed by UCA. In relevant part, the settlement agreement provides that the customer complaints metric under the QSP is triggered when the number of complaints exceeds 6.5 per 1,000 customers. ALJ Merbaba held an evidentiary hearing and issued a recommended decision which approved the settlement agreement with certain modifications. The customer complaint metric was discussed at the evidentiary hearing, but only to clarify its scope, and the recommended decision approved the 6.5 number reflected in the settlement agreement. The Commission then issued a decision on exceptions, which adopted the recommended decision with certain modifications, but similarly did not modify the customer complaints metric. The company explains that the 6.5 per 1,000 customer metric threshold was originally approved in the company's electric rate case, and further explains that prior to that case, the metric was triggered at 0.8 complaints per 1,000 customers, and that the rate case settlement agreement was supposed to make the metric even more stringent by reducing the threshold from 0.8 to 0.65. The company therefore wishes to fix the error by updating its electric tariff to reflect the more stringent metric. Public Service emphasizes that it has already been applying this metric in its QSP consistent with this update. The company requests Commission approval of certain other tariff revisions, including updating the tariff to reflect that gas-only customers are also included in the customer complaint metric, as well as the telephone response time metric, and updating the tariff to reflect that the company counts customers by the number of active premises at the end of December 31st of each performance year, rather than by the number of bills issued. Public Service requests the Commission authorize it to implement the tariff updates through a compliance advice letter to be filed on not less than 2 business days' notice and waive response time to the motion. Unless the Commissioners have any questions, I can proceed to a recommendation.
That'd be great.
Council believes that pursuant to Commission Rule 1003, Public Service has stated good cause to grant the motion for partial waiver. Granting the unopposed motion will allow the company to update its tariff to accurately reflect the more stringent metric, as well as the other clarifying changes described in the motion and reflected in the company's attachment A. We therefore recommend granting the motion and waiving any response time.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC order granting the motion. Thank you, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you.
24AL-0275E, the Black Hills electric rate case. Ms. Dundas.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. So this proceeding is on the agenda this week because on October 18th, staff UCA and the Pueblo Joint Movements filed a motion entitled the joint motion pursuant to Electrical 3109 F3D and request for expedited response time of 5 business days. In this notice motion, the parties raised several concerns about the customer notice, which Black Hills filed back in June. On June 14th, Black Hills filed its advice letter filing in this proceeding and included the customer notice required by 43104 CRS. The joint movements in this motion highlight several concerns, including that the notice includes incorrect monthly charges in several different categories and potentially a mistake of the total bill impact for the small business class, as well as claim deficiencies in the customer notice regarding the phase 2 issues, and the fact that the company rounded 36.8 million to 36 million as opposed to 37 million. UCA, the Pueblo Joint Movements and staff argue that Black Hills had prior notice of these errors and that the commission shall take or should take several steps to rectify these mistakes, including issuing a corrected customer notice and considering whether to insert a delay in the procedural schedule. Yesterday, Black Hills filed a corrected customer notice. The corrected customer notice corrects several of the mistakes raised in the joint motion, but not all of them. And Black Hills indicates that it will file a formal response to the joint motion by the deadline set by the commissioners. So that's the decision. That's the only decision for you today, is whether to set shortened response time to this motion.
You have a recommendation for us?
Yes, commissioners, I'd recommend, consistent with the motion, and because it's unopposed, shortening response time to close the business on Friday so that you can consider the responses and take up the substance of the motion more quickly than allowing the 14 days to run.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gellman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC decision, shortening response time, consistent with your recommendation.
Thank you.
Thanks. And again, just reminder, October 29th, October 30th, 5 to 8, public comment hearings, Pueblo Memorial Hall, November 19th, in Canyon City and City Council chambers from 4 to 7, public comments and virtual comments, December 5th, 4 to 7. So early and often, Commissioner. Thank you, Ms. Dundas. 24A-0341E, Mr. Dalton, the Coyote Transmission Facilities. Let's see if we got better internet.
Correct. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Bill Dalton, Staff Engineer. Proceeding 24A-0341E is an application of Public Service Company of Colorado for a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity for the customer-funded Coyote Transmission Facility. On August 9th, 2024, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an application requesting the Public Utilities Commission grant a CPCN for the company to construct, own, and operate a customer-funded transmission facility, the Coyote Transmission Facility, or project. Public Service states that the Coyote Transmission Facilities are necessary to provide electric service to 2 end-use customers, including an agency of the U.S. Department of Defense and the company providing contractual service to the Department of Defense. Specifically, the Coyote Transmission Facilities are needed to serve a new and existing energy-intensive facility supporting national defense operations of the federal government, which the customer plans to construct in Arapahoe County, Colorado. The cost of the Coyote Transmission Facility will be fully funded, that is, paid for by the customers, pursuant to the contractual agreements entered into with the company. Under Public Service Commission approved electric tariff, to the extent additional transmission facilities are required to supply a customer's requested level of electric service, the company must construct such facilities in accordance with the terms of its transmission line extension policy. The Coyote transmission facility will consist of both transmission lines and substation components. The company will construct double circuit transmission lines. Both will connect from existing substations and continue to the new Coyote substation. Prior to filing this application, Public Service considered multiple alternatives when evaluating possible solutions to the customer's needs, and the following summarizes the results. Given the state of the current service, magnitude and new load, the customer need for security, reliability, and redundancy, no action alternative, non-wire alternative, and storage alternatives were not considered viable. Advanced transmission technologies, given the scope and requirements of the project, the company did not identify any advanced transmission technology that would make sense to incorporate into this project. Ultimately, it was a transmission facility upgrade that was identified. This solution met the customer's specific needs for serving a significant new load, security, and reliability and redundancy. As to the transmission alternatives, prior to filing the application, the company did perform a transmission study that identified a number of options and alternatives, which were shared with the customer for their evaluation and feedback. The customer identified the preferred alternative due to the specific security and reliability needs associated with their operations. The company's electric tariff, and specifically the company's transmission line extension policy, governs and identifies the responsibility of the Federal Defense Agency and federal contractor. The cost of the Coyote facilities will be recovered from the two customers through a combination of upfront construction payments and monthly service and facility charges. Public Service will not recover any of these costs from any other ratepayers. Once the project achieves commercial operation, the two customers will be subject to general rates applicable. In presenting the cost estimate and schedule for the project, the company explains the project lifecycle process for developing, monitoring, and controlling the scope, estimates, schedule, and risk associated with the construction and extension of transmission facilities. There are typically 4 levels of project estimates that are generated for each project: indicative, scoping, appropriation, engineering. As the project advances through the project estimating phases, the project definition, the design, and cost become more refined and specific. At the time of the application, the company estimates are at the appropriation level. The total forecasted cost included in this application represents the company's best estimates of the cost to be incurred at the time of this filing. The company's transmission line extension policy and contractual agreements with the customer will ensure that customers will collectively fund all the costs associated with the construction of the Coyote transmission facility, including the Federal Defense Agency responsibility for costs that could potentially exceed current project estimates. Next, I'd like to talk about the project audible noise and magnetic field. Public Service used an independent engineer to assess the project magnetic field and audible noise. And staff has reviewed the independent engineer's study on magnetic field and audible noise levels for the project, include that both are reasonable and require no further mitigation. Next, I would just like to talk about a waiver request the company has also requested in the CPN application. Given that the Coyote transmission facility will be paid entirely by the customer, consistent with the company's transmission line extension policy, the company requests a waiver of Rule 3206D reporting requirements, limited to exclude Coyote transmission facilities from its annual report obligations. Instead of reporting the Coyote transmission facility in its 3206 annual report, the company proposes to notify the Commission at the time the Coyote transmission facilities are placed into service through a notice in this proceeding. Staff believes that this alternative approach to reporting Coyote transmission facility is reasonable, given the highly confidential nature of the project and details already provided in this application. Providing the Coyote transmission facility an annual 3206 filings will be duplicate of the information already provided in this application. Next, interventions. The Office of Utility Consumer Advocacy, UCA, on August 29, 2024, filed an intervention and requested a hearing specifically to address the inclusion of customer finance assets and rate base and ongoing cost impact for customer-owned facility. The UCA and company met further to discuss the application, cost recovery, and responsibilities. The company filed supplemental direct testimony on August 20th, addressing UCA concerns that ratepayers will not be adversely impacted by granting this application. On September 20th, 2024, UCA withdrew its intervention request for a hearing and stated it does no longer object to the application. With the UCA intervention withdrawn, this application is now considered unopposed. No other party sought intervention. Before I make any recommendations, do you have any questions?
I think you can make a recommendation, then we'll come back with questions, comments, or a vote.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation just on the CPCN, and then I'll pass it on to legal counsel for discussion of the motion for extraordinary protection. On the regarding the CPCN, staff recommends that the Commission approve the CPCN for Public Service Coyote Transmission Facilities Project. The company's application, testimony, and supporting engineering studies and analysis support that the project is needed to support the requesting customer increased load requirements. Approving the CPCM will allow public service to provide a vital infrastructure upgrade that supports a national security mission. And staff recommends granting Rule 3206D waiver for the Coyote project. Next, I'd like to pass it over to the legal.
Well, we'll take a vote on that, or Commissioner Plant, comments, questions on all this?
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks, Mr. Dalton. I agree with your recommendation. All seems reasonable with the customer paying for the facility to serve them. Just a question with regard to I don't know if you know, but with regard to generation and resource adequacy, if we have a large new customer here to the extent, or they're not a new customer, but a large new load, a large new facility to serve them, and we're already seeing from public service concerns about resource adequacy in terms of having to extend gas contracts and a lot of concern about timely delivery of the current clean energy plan being considered. I was just wondering if we understand if public service has the generation to serve this customer, independent of the transmission facility question.
Okay. Yes, I understand. So what the company's public service CEP ERP still ongoing, 21A 0141E, resource adequacy concerns are being addressed actively in that proceeding right now. So that's a open proceeding where those questions are being addressed.
I'm not sure they may be. I agree with the sentiment that that's the proper venue. I think we have serious concerns right now about timely delivery of the clean energy plan and the resources we need to maintain resource adequacy, which I would suspect at some point gets into some of these decisions about adding new large loads in terms of really understanding the feasibility to serve them, independent of who is paying for the transmission facilities. Just not sure. Chairman, I mean, we're already seeing resource adequacy concerns, so I don't know where to go with large new loads that might not have been considered even in the CEP.
Well, I'd just say, I don't know if you've taken a peek at the new just transition solicitation filing, but it's a request for over 10,000 megawatts of new generation. And the sales forecast is now in excess of 4%, when historically it's been something like 0.3%. So I think that'll be the forum to take this up. And I share your general concerns, about, especially about putting data centers in the Denver metro area, given how transmission constrained it is. But this does not seem like the right forum to try and get those concerns addressed, other than to maybe put in the order that we have these concerns, and going forward, we'd like a fuller discussion as these loads get cited. But this seems like a no-brainer decision, as you guys have both demonstrated with your votes. So I don't know. Not very satisfactory, Commissioner Gilman, but anything else you'd like to say on that?
No, I think that's fine. Some recognition in the decision that there's already been some resource adequacy concerns expressed, as well as significant delays in the company's current clean energy plan proceeding that kind of tend to tie these issues together as we move forward.
Questions. Commissioner Plain, anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think, you raise, a good point, and one of the main conversations I'm sure we'll be having within the JTS.
Over the coming months and years. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. And let's hear from council on the remaining issues. Ms. Dundas.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Lindsay Dundas of your Commission Council, and I will present a motion for extraordinary protection of highly confidential information that the company filed in conjunction with its CPCN application. In this MEP motion, the company requests extraordinary protection of certain information about the exact location, capacities, capabilities, costs, and operation of the facilities to be served by this project, because these details are, quote, confidential by the virtue of the highly sensitive national defense operations they are built to serve, and the confidential nature of the contracts between public service and the customers for the construction of these facilities. Public service argues that the disclosure of information that identifies where loads interconnect to the public service system creates a security risk that could compromise public safety, and in the case of this facility, national defense. This project will serve Buckley Air Force Base, so that's the connection there. These are the same reasons public service requested a waiver of Rule 3206D annual reporting requirements that Mr. Dalton already discussed. The specific information plus any information that can be used to derive the following includes specific geographic information where the Coyote transmission facilities are located and where any facility loads are interconnected, any actual or estimated cost information derived from the contracts and project agreements that is listed as confidential, information about the technical details of the facilities to be constructed, existing and planned facility loads and operations, and all negotiated contract terms related to the development of the facilities. The company requests that access be limited to the commissioners, ALJs, advisory staff and attorneys, trial staff and its attorneys, UCA and its attorneys. Public service prepared non-disclosure agreements for the attorneys and subject matter experts as required by Rule 1101B of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure. And public service also provided the affidavit of Mr. Michael Pasusi, identifying the employees and groups with access to the highly confidential information and attesting that the information must remain protected as highly confidential indefinitely. So that's a summary of the motion, and I can provide a recommendation if you'd like.
Yes, we welcome your recommendation.
Sure. The reasoning and arguments in the company's motion set forth good cause to grant the requested protective order. The requested protections are appropriate, reasonable, and consistent with past practice, as well as the Commission's rules. And in addition, this motion is unopposed, so I recommend granting the MEP and associated rule waiver.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
I also agree.
As do I. Mr. Dalton, other issues on this item?
No. Draft order is being prepared. Decision rather.
Thank you, sir. And this could be an ABC order. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. 24I-0394E. Mr. Foreman, outage data.
Yes. Hello again, commissioners. Before you here is a decision whether to grant the unopposed first motion for extraordinary protection of highly confidential information and request for waiver of response time filed by Public Service on October 15th, 2024. On September 16th, 2024, by decision number C-24-0668, the Commission opened this investigatory proceeding, directing Commission staff to conduct an investigation into the recent spate of outages on Public Service's electric system. The Commission directed staff to conduct the investigation through the audit authority vested in the Commission by various statutory provisions contained in Title 40 and Articles 1 through 7 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. In its motion, Public Service seeks highly confidential treatment of the following information: specific geographic information of electric infrastructure that is provided in tandem with detailed attribution information that is included in the company's geographic information system and is non-public and proprietary. Information about technical details of electric facilities, including specifications, ratings, capacities, and customers served, and documents, studies, or information that could be used to describe the previously described information. The company explains that the information includes highly confidential and sensitive detailed locational and technical infrastructure information about the company's existing electric infrastructure, and asserts that disclosing the information publicly could increase the risks of attacks by bad actors on the utility's transmission and distribution systems, potentially causing outages and disrupting the electric grid. The company also cites to previous Commission decisions in which the Commission recognized the importance of protecting similar information. The company requests a finding that disclosure of the highly confidential information without sufficient protection may jeopardize the company's ability to manage its system and provide safe, reliable service, and risks placing the company at a competitive disadvantage. And finally, the company requests access to the information be limited to the commissioners, ALJs, the Commission's advisory staff and advisory attorneys, and staff and attorneys for staff. Before addressing the merits of the company's motion, we believe it is worth taking this opportunity to explain the Commission's processes regarding investigatory dockets and non-disclosure agreements. As I mentioned, this proceeding is an I docket in which Commission staff has been directed to use its full statutory audit authority to investigate outages on Public Service's electric system. Pursuant to Section 40-15-107, all information collected through audit is confidential. Importantly, Commission counsel and staff sign annual NDAs, which are kept on file at the PUC, meaning they do not need to sign NDAs to access the protected information here. Counsel also notes that because this is an I docket and is therefore an administrative and non-adjudicated proceeding, there are no parties to the proceeding that would be required to sign NDAs to access the protected information. Therefore, the highly confidential protections sought by the company in this circumstance apply only to members of the public specifically requesting the protected information. In that event, the company may require a third party requesting the protected information to sign an NDA to access it. Counsel would like to emphasize that it is the company's obligation to handle disclosure of highly confidential information using an NDA. And in an I proceeding investigation in which staff gathers data through its audit authority, which is afforded confidential treatment, that data is only available to Commission staff and anyone else in the Commission deemed appropriate to view the data, including Commission counsel and trial staff counsel. If an outside party should seek access to such information in this investigatory proceeding, the Commission does not provide requesting individuals with NDAs and does not adjudicate which requesters can access the protected information. These are the company's obligations. Accordingly, any protections granted today will apply only to members of the public requesting the protected information, and anyone seeking the information must request it directly from the company, not the Commission. If the outcome of the investigation should lead to an adjudicatory proceeding, Public Service will then be required to seek additional protection of that information separately in any subsequent proceeding. With that said, if the Commissioners do not have any follow-up questions, I can now move to the merits of the motion and provide a recommendation.
That'd be great.
Pursuant to Rule 1101B, a party that believes information requires extraordinary protection may file a motion that shows the information is highly confidential, that the protection afforded by the Commission's rules for confidential information is insufficient, and that, if adopted, the highly confidential protections proposed by the movement will afford sufficient protection. Notwithstanding the clarifications I made, Council believes the company's motion comports with the requirements in Rule 1101 and states good cause to grant the requested protections. The motion is unopposed, and Council believes the requested protections are appropriate, reasonable, and consistent with the Commission's rules and past practice. I therefore recommend granting the unopposed motion and waiving any remaining response time.
Commissioner Plant.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with the recommendation. I would just parenthetically say this is a docket that was opened to look into loss of power people having issues that we were hearing more and more of loss of service. And I know that personally, I've been contacted by a few people in the Salida area around loss of service, extended outages. And I've pointed those folks to make sure that they can submit their public comments in this proceeding. And so I just wanted to highlight that for people who might be listening, that this is an investigatory docket that's being conducted by the PUC staff, and would encourage any people who are experiencing extensive outages or greater than usual sort of loss of service in the PSCO territory to submit your comments, public comments into this proceeding, so that your comments can be incorporated in the consideration that the staff will give to the proceeding.
Well said. I just echo that. Commissioner Gumman, on the move.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Plant, and would also say, I mean, on the topic of confidentiality, part of the real purpose here is to ensure that customers have a good view of what's going on. And we should really endeavor to be as transparent as possible with those customers within the bounds that we have, to ensure that there's a full transparent view of what's going on with regard to the data. But I agree with your recommendation, Mr. Foreman.
As do I, and maybe Mr. Foreman, in the ABC order, you can echo Commissioner Plant's invitation for people to share their concerns and the need for transparency as best we can, consistent with the rules.
Sounds good. Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. 24L-0444G, Mr. Duncan, Durango Mountain Utilities, GCA.
Good morning, Commissioners. Here this morning to talk about Durango Mountain Utilities gas cost adjustment. Durango Mountain Utilities, or DMU, is a small propane gas distribution company located near the Purgatory Mountain community. DMU files an annual GCA as required by Rule 4602C. As to the finance, this presentation is going to be in two parts. There's the finances of the GCA, and then there's the rule waivers that DMU is requesting. DMU's current commodity charge is $1.66 a gallon. The commodity charge includes the GCA and the forecasted fuel prices, any deferred revenue, cost of storage, and transportation. They're currently proposing a commodity charge of $1.23, which is a fairly significant decrease from the $1.66 that it's currently at. The rules that they're requesting to be waived are rules that really don't apply to DMU's situation. They're requesting that Rule 4604D be waived. 4604D requires a month-by-month interest calculation with the deferred balance. But since the way DMU does their gas sales is more by gallon and just total volume over the year, they are requesting that rule be waived. The rule was first waived when in 2014 in 14L-1021G. The rule's been waived ever since they've had a CPCN, and commission staff finds good cause for the rule to continue to be waived. DMU also requests a waiver of rules 4604F and G. These rules require the forecasted gas transportation and demand and current gas cost allocations be included in GCA Exhibits 5 and 6. These are not applicable to DMU's business practices since they are a propane distribution company. Most of their propane is transported to them by bobtail truck from Farrell or AmeriGas. Thus, it's really not applicable to the way DMU conducts business. They also request that Rule 4604 H4 be waived. This rule requires a reference to the gas purchase plan. Again, due to their business practices, they really don't file a gas purchase plan. They have two suppliers, and it's just whoever gives them the best price. They don't function like a typical natural gas utility. DMU requests Rule 4002D be waived. That rule requires notice to be circulated in local newspapers. But DMU's customer base tends to be seasonal, and it's smaller and more closely knit than the customer bases of other natural gas utilities. And DMU has a service called Constant Contact, where they have direct mail contact with all of their customers, and they submitted notice to their Constant Contact service. I'm aware that was a lot. Are there any questions, or would you like me to get to my recommendation?
If you can get to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff has reviewed the information provided by the company and tested the calculations provided, and we find no issue with the proposed GCA adjustment. Staff recommends that the application be deemed complete, that the application be granted on less than statutory notice, and that the application be granted.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I, and that can be an ABC order, Mr. Duncan. So thank you, sir. 24L-0445, CNG GCA, Mr. Lay or Mr. Duncan. Mr. Lay.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. How are you? I'm here to present on the Colorado natural gas cost adjustment. On October 15th, Colorado Natural Gas filed the application for gas cost adjustment rate changes with an effective date of November 1st, pursuant to Commission Rule 4602B. Rule 4602B requires CNG provides its GCA to be effective November 1st and April 1st of each year. The November 1st filing is the company's winter GCA filing, and the April 1st filing is the summer GCA filing. In this case, the request is made on less than statutory notice, which is typical for GCA filings in order to include the most current gas market and deferred account balance data. CNG has 4 zones: Bailey, Pueblo West, Cripple Creek, and Eastern Colorado for GCA purposes. CNG's GCA has 3 main components: the projected gas commodity cost based on forecasted sales, contract terms, and market indices, in addition to upstream costs; the deferred gas costs, or account number 191 balance, in this case as of June 2024, adjusted for unbilled revenue; and projected cost allocations. The cumulative effect of the GCA rate changes and the deferred account balance will result in a decrease in revenues in the Bailey division by $415,000 or 3.93%, a decrease in revenues in Pueblo West by $470,000 or 8.4%, an increase in revenues in Cripple Creek by $100,000 or 3.35%, and an increase in revenues in Eastern Colorado by $100,000 or 3.59%. This represents a total decrease of $648,000 approximately, or 3.11% for all divisions. I can pause here for questions or proceed to staff's recommendation.
If you could jump to your recommendation, that'd be great.
Great. Staff recommends that the application be deemed complete and that the application be granted on less than statutory notice.
Commissioner Plant. Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Goman.
I also agree.
As do I, and that can be an ABC order, Mr. Lay. So thank you much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. 21A-0141E, Unit 3 PIM, Public Service Company of Colorado ERP, our weekly get together, Mr. Eaton. Fire away.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff. This morning, I'll tee up your deliberations on the Pueblo Unit 3 Performance Incentive Mechanism, or PIM, in connection with Public Service Company of Colorado's 2021 Electric Resource Plan and Clean Energy Plan, or ERP-CEP. I'll first set up your vote on the Unit 3 PIM and then finish up with future reporting and the Commission's alternative cost recovery proposal. The concept of a stakeholder PIM is present in the Phase 1 settlement agreement that was filed in this proceeding back in April of 2022. In the Commission's Phase 1 decision, which was issued in August of 2022, the Commission largely approved the stakeholder process that Phase 1 settlement put forth, and also required the parties to craft PIMs addressing Pueblo Unit 3's operation and maintenance, or O&M, expenses, capital cost, and availability factor. After a few delays, Public Service ultimately filed its stakeholder PIM on April 30th, 2024. The stakeholder PIM measures Unit 3's capital cost, O&M expenses, and availability factor to calculate $1 per megawatt value for each year of the plant's operations starting in 2025. If the actual calculated costs exceed 10% deadband, then the company would share 20% of the overages and vice versa. In addition, there's an annual $1 million cap on any incentive or disincentive. I won't get into all of the nuances of the Unit 3 PIM, but you'll remember that the baseline for the Unit 3 PIM is derived from the Phase 2 modeling assumptions. Only the fixed Unit 3 O&M costs included in the company's base rates are included in the Unit 3 PIM calculation, and the calculation of the actual outage factor will not be impacted by any reserve shutdown periods. When it initially proposed the Unit 3 PIM, Public Service reported that Western Resource Advocates and trial staff of the Public Utilities Commission supported the Unit 3 PIM, and that the Colorado Energy Office did not oppose it. In the following months, the Commission issued a series of decisions directing the company to file additional information regarding O&M and capital expense forecasts, requesting comment on an alternative cost recovery approach proposed by the Commission, and ultimately setting an abbreviated evidentiary hearing for the Unit 3 PIM. The Commission conducted this evidentiary hearing on September 17, 2024. On October 4th, the Commission received statements of position, or SOPs, from Public Service, staff, and the Colorado Energy Consumers, or CEC. CEC's SOP is supported by the Office of Utility Consumer Advocate, or UCA, and Climax Molybdenum Company. CEC, UCA, and Climax oppose the Unit 3 PIM and recommend denying it. CEC argues the proposed PIM is too complicated to succeed as intended. In addition, CEC argues that the Unit 3 PIM is now both stale and premature. In a departure from the positions advanced in pre-filed testimony and during the hearing, staff's SOP also requests that the Commission deny the Unit 3 PIM. Staff notes that the company's current O&M and capital addition projections are substantially lower than the Phase 2 baseline cost, and that this disconnect between the baseline cost and the actual cost will likely continue because Public Service is modifying its operating processes as Unit 3 nears retirement. Instead of the Unit 3 PIM, staff suggests the Commission could address Unit 3's O&M and capital expenses in the Pueblo Just Transition Solicitation, or JTS, just as the Commission plans to address the emissions reduction PIM in that proceeding. In its SOP, Public Service continues to advance the Unit 3 PIM as proposed, noting that its proposed PIM meets the Phase 1 directives, including as to how the PIM uses the Phase 2 modeling assumptions. Public Service argues the Unit 3 PIM provides adequate operational flexibility to the company to manage the unit while at the same time offering a meaningful incentive. However, Public Service acknowledges the Commission's concerns regarding the Unit 3 PIM and suggests the Commission could also defer the development and implementation of a Unit 3 PIM until after Phase 2 of the Pueblo JTS. And then finally, in addition to these SOPs, the Commission received a robust public comment on September 16, 2024, opposing the Unit 3 PIM. The public comment asserts, for instance, that the company rearranged and increased the projected capital and O&M expenses in the Phase 2 modeling to make it easier for the company to earn incentives under the PIM, and that these Unit 3 inputs did not receive much scrutiny during Phase 2. The public comment also raises concerns that the company could artificially lower the PIM's outage factor by using a reserve shutdown to mask a forced outage. Ultimately, public comment requests that 1, the commission reject the Unit 3 PIM. 2, the commission direct the company to stop spending money on the auxiliary boiler, which was a large capital investment that the company recently made in Unit 3. And 3, the commission direct public service to prepare model runs in the Pueblo JTS that minimize expenditures and operations of Unit 3 and retire the plant as soon as possible. So with that overview of the issues regarding Unit 3 PIM, I can get into more of the details. If you have any questions, turn it over to you for discussion or proceed to my recommendation.
I think maybe it's all right with you, Commissioner Plan. I think I'd like to hear from Commissioner Gilman, who at hearing and previously seemed to have the strongest views on this. Commissioner Gilman, if you're willing to go first, that'd be great.
I am, sure, no problem. Yeah, and I had kind of forced this one to go to hearing because I had some initial real concerns about the appropriateness of the PIM and if it would create the incentive that we had hoped. After the hearing, I remain very skeptical that this will produce the outcomes that we wanted. I'd very much hoped going into that this would be salvageable. Perhaps there were some changes we could make to address some of the main issues. But at the end of the day, to me, the main shortcomings of this are still pretty glaring. We've got a major issue with the baseline, as Mr. Eden indicated, whereby when the phase 2 forecasting came in, it looked significantly higher than even much more recent forecasts that the company has been making in 23 and 24 with regard to their annual ERP reporting, which is troubling, leading me to believe we don't really have a solid baseline upon which to base the future expectation of O&M and capital expenses moving forward. If we were to move forward with the proposal, which includes the phase 2 numbers, which the public comment is correct, did not receive much scrutiny in phase 2 of the ERP proceeding, we would essentially be knowingly taking kind of the highest possible forecast that has been advanced so far upon which to base this, which makes me incredibly uncomfortable, especially since much more recent forecasting by the company does not utilize similar values moving forward. I'm also pretty troubled by the annual $1 million cap, which to me just leaves open significant possibility for the company to load fairly significant costs all into 1 year if they're already going over, and the maximum penalty is $1 million. It would be great if we could figure out some other way to deal with that, but none is readily apparent or probably supported by this record in order to kind of properly deal with the issues that creates. And I know the company kind of advances the idea in their SOP that they can't just move around capital investments and can't kind of game it in that way. Unfortunately, that's not what I see in this record. There are significant capital investments that appear either unknown or undisclosed even a year before, which are then made. So unfortunately to them, the record kind of indicates differently that either they're unaware or not disclosing some of these major investments coming, or that they can be moved from year to year. So I have significant concerns that with the $1 million cap, it just very much blunts the ability to actually manage costs, since costs could go over by way more than that in a given year. And that's essentially a relatively low cap considering that. And I also share concerns looking at the availability factor, with modified operations, especially limiting the runtime of Comanche 3 in accordance with previous decisions and agreements within this proceeding. It is possible that could mask some of the actual metrics used in the availability factor issues used here. So with regard to the PIM in general, I unfortunately and very reluctantly don't really see this proposal as appropriate. And I'm not sure at all with this record that we could modify it to a degree that it would be acceptable and provide the actual sort of customer protections that we really intended for it to provide, I think there's a much higher likelihood that it could just provide a windfall of incentives to the company, while they might not actually be reducing costs based on their more recent projections. So those are my overall thoughts. I have a few more specifics on some of the areas moving forward from here, but curious to hear from both of you.
I'm convinced, Commissioner.
Yeah, similarly, yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Gilman, your proposal to take this to a hearing, and I think that in the course of doing that, we got an awful lot more information that really points to some, difficulties in establishing a PIM of this sort, not least of which, and probably most of which, is an uncertain baseline. I mean, if you don't even know what that your baseline is an accurate representation, then I don't know how you establish any kind of, performance incentive based upon that baseline. And I think that there's an awful lot of questions surrounding that baseline. One of the things that I was really struck by in looking over all the documents that the company submitted and that the various parties submitted was the incredible cost of operating this facility. There's a huge incentive to not operate it because it's just so expensive. It's incredible to me. And I think that, some of the response that, we certainly have at this point, I think was really echoed by the staff and their comments and their, changing their position and saying, looking at it a second time, we recommend just rejecting it and, looking at it again in JTS. And, I think that that's on the right path. So I would support that.
Yeah, that's what given what we have in front of us on the JTS, the Denver CPCN on transmission and the distribution system planning, I'm really not happy to be kicking issues down the road. It's just incredible the decisions we have pending, but on this one, I agree with you. It's not appropriate to improve this a PIM on this record, and I wouldn't know how to fix it. So, Commissioner Gilman, do you have specific comments you'd like to see in the order for discussion?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, with regard to future reporting, I just wanted to take a moment to clarify our expectations on reporting requirements for forecasts moving forward. In its pre-filed testimony, the company acknowledged that the scope of the O&M forecast changed between their 2023 and 2024 ERP annual report. To make matters more complicated on the forecasting, we did not even have consistent methodology between the same report from one year to the other. And I think that's something we should order be improved in the future. In response to questions about the different O&M reporting methodologies at the hearing, Mr. Pascucci testified that the company will provide a comprehensive O&M forecast for future plant operations as opposed to just overhauls, and will denote which O&M is fixed versus variable. I will note in its SOP, the company appears to kind of condition those things that they had committed to doing on approval of the PIM, which clearly we're not doing here. So I would like to make clear that we still expect those improvements to be made in the annual ERP reporting. Even outside of what we order, the company should endeavor for comprehensive and consistent forecasting, as this has been a consistent problem. But let's clarify for them in this order that they have to provide the ERP annual reports with a comprehensive O&M forecast for full plant operations, including fuel handling costs broken down by fixed and variable costs, and that those should take the more holistic form that we have seen. So that's the first item. Just wanted to see if we could emphasize that and make that point in the order.
That makes sense to me. You okay with that, Commissioner Plant?
Yep.
Keep going.
Chairman, I know you had talked in one of our previous deliberations about alternative cost recovery for some of the capital expenses going forward. I don't know if that's something we want to address in terms of anything specific, you know, as we look forward of things to be considered there, but did just want to raise that if you want any modeling or specific approaches to be identified in future filings, this might be an appropriate venue to identify that.
Yeah, maybe just in the next electric rate case filing, if they could file the capital costs over and above the phase one estimate as if they were amortized, whatever, instantaneously or over the course of a year, with some language in the order saying we'd like to find ways to reduce or eliminate the company profiting from, you know, mistakes or failures to disclose. So something like that in the order. Commissioner Gilman, does that make sense to you? So not trying to resolve anything here, which is an inadequate record, but just a filing requirement in the next electric rate case.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to try to identify those costs above what was forecasted. The question of which forecast remains very rich at this point in terms of which forecast you're forecasting it over. And I was envisioning we could probably include a little more fulsome discussion in the decision on, I think, the intent that was behind this and our real goal to mind those costs going forward, especially given the limited expected remaining life of the plant before retirement. So what I was thinking was to express our view that the commission would like a clear view of upcoming expected expenses, and the company should endeavor to minimize those. Essentially, any significant expenses going into that plant now are nearly certainly going to become stranded assets, which is expected to be paid by ratepayers, despite their very limited use moving forward. So while some investments may be necessary, larger unexpected investments should have significantly more scrutiny at this point in the plant's life than at times when a much longer life was expected. And what may have been prudent if the company had 20 or more years left in its life, or even 10 more years left in its life, may well not be prudent or may be viewed differently when the plant will be retiring inside of about 6 years or so. We simply can't be spending money that's not absolutely necessary on this plant. Certainly what happened here was concerning as far as disclosure and planning, in seeing a really major investment for this plant kind of shoehorned in between when it could have been evaluated in phase one of the ERP, which is the timing in which we were making retirement decisions on this plant and really needed to understand the upcoming expenses of the plant. And then this investment dropped right in between that and a proceeding where we could actually evaluate and try and contain cost on the plant moving forward. And while there may be a reason for that, it certainly leads to more questions than answers, and this concern on the commission having greater oversight and greater transparency into the expected expenses of the plant, so that we can ensure cost containment to benefit ratepayers moving forward.
Well, I'd just say, even if it does turn out to be a prudent expense, you know, throwing this into prior costs that may get amortized over longer periods is a struggle for me. So
perhaps it's that, like, the prudency and treatment of costs should be considered differently given the limited remaining life and the real possibility that the large majority of these costs become stranded.
Yeah, and it's not just that the life of the plant is shorter for environmental reasons. It's just a long history of poor and inadequate business and operational practices that have been documented by staff in detail. So given that history, I just think the tolerance for the company to profit off, what staff has characterized as poor and inadequate business and operational practices is just at an end for me. So it's not just a matter of, it's got a shorter lifespan there. I mean, there's a real experience and track record with this plant that has, I just think, exhausted this commission's patience for disclosure failures and stuff with, the type of stuff we saw with that auxiliary boiler where it's, just, I don't know, they forgot to tell us.
No,
So,
very reasonable point. If we recall the modeling from earlier in this record, there are major economic concerns and reasons why this plant was chosen for retirement, aside from just the environmental considerations. I certainly agree.
Commissioner Plant, anything you'd like to jump in here?
No, I'd agree with all of those comments. And, one of the things, I mean, the aux boiler absolutely should have been predictable and should have been a part of, any kind of notification of what anticipated expenses would be for this plant. And the fact that it wasn't is really disturbing. And beyond the point that Commissioner Gilman was pointing out about, stranded assets of any additional investments that are made over the next 6 years. The other thing I'm really interested in along those lines is whether things can be repurposed in some other part of the system, whether they have an application in other parts of the system. Is the idea of, investing millions of dollars into things to keep a plant that is extremely expensive and highly polluting running for another few years is just really a tough pill to swallow. And if those investments don't have some other values somewhere else in the system, it's going to be really hard to approve expending any kind of money like that.
Commissioner Gilman, other issues?
No, that's it. And I would say I support you're asking in the next rate case for them to specifically identify costs above and beyond. Which forecast do you want? There's a wide variety.
Mr. Eden, maybe you can help me. I had some very specific numbers in my head that aren't in front of me now, but I think they had a phase 1 forecast that we were relying on, and then they added the auxiliary boiler. So it was like 14 million versus something like 34 million, right? Or 12 million versus 34 million.
I don't have those numbers with me at the moment.
Yeah, maybe we'll do this as a TBC decision. So, are you all right? Anything you heard, Commissioner Plant, that causes you pause?
Nope.
Mr. Eden, I think you had 2 more issues.
No, the other 2 issues I was going to bring up is the future reporting and this alternative cost recovery proposal. And I think you've handled both of those.
All right. Do you have any concerns timing with the TB? Well, I think this could be ABC. I think you'll figure out the open issues. Are you okay with this ABC, Commissioner Gilman?
I am. I'm happy to send along some of the language that I used with regard to our concern about minding future expenses and the possibility they'd be viewed differently.
And if you can include some of my thoughts on the history and the staff report, govern how we think about this going forward, that'd be great, Mr. Eden. Commissioner Plant. Well, go ahead, Mr. Eden, then to you, Commissioner Plant. Sorry, I'm like bouncing you on and off mute all the time, Commissioner Plant. Commissioner Eden. Mr. Eden. You've been demoted, Mr. Eden.
If this will be an ABC decision, I was hoping to get more clarity on the forecast of the alternative cost recovery proposal. When the commission initially pitched this alternative cost recovery proposal, it was based on the phase two modeling assumptions. Anything over that would be treated as an expense in 1 year. Given that the commission is essentially directing the company to explore this concept in a future rate case, there could probably be more than one baseline if the commission wanted, but there should be a little bit more clarity there.
I'm not sure I have, I'm prepared to, well, maybe let's do this as a TBC order then. I'm not prepared to identify specifics. So let's see if we can work it out on the TBC process. And if not, we'll see you yet again in another week, Mr. Eden. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine for me.
So I guess Commissioner Plant, you okay? I guess we're going to do this as a TBC.
Yep, TBC sounds good to me.
Commissioner Goodman, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
And if you could get Mr. Eden your script to the extent it's written out so he can help write the order, that'd be great. Mr. Eden, anything else on this one?
Nope, nothing for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Plant, anything else before we adjourn?
Nope, I have nothing else. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Goldman.
Nothing additional, thanks.
Thanks, guys. We're adjourned.